We are beating the con crunch allegations today, gang. Around 2 months ago, I ran a poll on social media asking people what my next big cosplay project should be because I was indecisive. And after a close race and a tiebreaker dice roll, we decided on Maka Albarn from Soul Eater. Soul Eater was my first anime and is still my favorite to this day, so to say I'm excited for this project is an understatement. This has been a dream of mine since I was like 13. It's not a very complicated costume to build, and thank goodness for that because I'll be wearing it to Colossal Con East and ooh boy is that price tag hefty! I actually own a lot of the pieces for the base outfit in my closet and I just need to thrift one or two things. And I realized I don't really need to do a full build vlog if it's mostly just going to be store-bought pieces. The one thing I do need to build though is Soul Scythe form. If I were to rate myself on my prop building skills, I'd give myself like 3.5 out of 5 stars. I kind of know what I'm doing. But this is the single biggest costume prop I have ever made, and I'm a little intimidated about it. I've still got plenty of time to try and retry things if they go wrong. So for today, I'm just gonna make the first mock-up out of cardboard and see what I need to do. I roughly sketched the shape of the blade of the scythe onto a scrap piece of cardboard that I had sitting around for I don't know how long. I wasn't looking at a reference when I was doing this, so I was literally eyeballing all of the measurements and proportions and just kind of went with whatever looked correct. When I looked back later, it turns out I didn't have to change much, so I guess I committed the design to memory already. So I cut it out, mostly following the lines. You can see there's a bunch of stray marks everywhere from what I didn't get right. I should have erased some of that stuff in hindsight to make it less confusing for myself. And once the blade was fully formed, I found a way to stick it onto the pole by cutting slits into the top and inserting the cardboard inside. Okay, so this is obviously not phenomenal. The shape feels about right. It's obviously going to be less like this. I do think this technique for sticking it inside so it's collapsible is going to work, but I'm going to have something over this edge because there is a little tail that comes off of it, and that will stabilize the other side because it doesn't quite fit in the slit. I also think I'm going to have to widen these little slits to make more room for the foam. Either that or cut indentations into the foam. The shape of the blade was retraced with this white colored pencil onto this black foam-based poster board. This was the cheapest and sturdiest material I could find, and it also saved me a little bit of paint in the end because it was already black. And well, here's the thing about this material. It's very clean, very sturdy. It made a very satisfying sound when you so much as tap it, and the colored pencil took to it quite well, left the perfect outline for me to cut on. The cutting itself was the problem. Because it was so thick, my scissors couldn't get through more than a couple of inches at a time, and I had to break the thing into multiple pieces to get anything cut out. When I was out shopping for the supplies for this, I picked up an X-Acto knife blade and then I put it back because I thought, no, I'm not gonna need that. And I think I need it now. Oh well. So I used the little knife that come on those bottle openers. You know the ones, the weird mechanical ones. I was not about to run back out to the store, so I was going to use my improvising brain to get this done as quickly as possible. I swapped back and forth between my scissors and the blade, depending on the area of the blade that I was cutting out. And this way I was able to get everything out as cleanly as I possibly could. Ah! That was such a satisfying pop. Even the cleanest of cuts are going to have a little bit of residue. Just look at the pile of shavings on that table. Oh. So I switched between scissors for the paper layer and a nail file for the foam layer to smooth out the edges a little bit further. This was very satisfying but also very messy. My poor table has not known cleanliness in about 2 weeks, guys. It was So much. And even with the other steps, there was so much mess. You will see more as this goes on. There were a few places where the paper ripped in a way where I couldn't tear or cut it off, so I just glued it back down to cover the foam, like it never happened in the first place. I erased all of the white-colored pencil marks, but even with the erasing, it didn't completely go away, so I just lightly painted black over any of the shadows that were still present on the board. And once those were out of the way, I could start painting the rest of the blade. First, I blocked out the zigzag shape with a red Prismacolor. I completely forgot that I owned Prismacolors until I was doing this project and I was searching for a red, and it was the first one that I pulled out. I am glad that I pulled out this one because it was so bold, and I was able to color block the entire shape with only sharpening a couple of times in between. Shout out to Prismacolors, you are a real one. When it came time for the actual paint job, I forgot one of the most important rules of painting anything. Always do a color match test swatch. So I went through 2 different shades of red and at least 3 layers of paint on the zigzags. It still turned out pretty close to canon and very bold, much like how I wanted it to. It just took about a half hour longer than I thought it was going to. Enjoy some painting vibes. Oh, I didn't even realize it started going. Are you seeing this? It's not perfect right now because it doesn't have everything else. But we at least have the blade. And it's completely detachable. I'm so thrilled. Okay, so I was going to make this cylindrical part out of foam, but I was a dum-dum here and didn't heat form it first. So even though I got so far assembling it all together, it turned out looking like a grilled cheese sandwich. So I had to take all of it apart and start picking the glue off. Oh, no! Oh, no! Yeah, we're just gonna cover that up. This mistake was quickly rectified as I moved on to Plan B. I completely deconstructed the roll of paper towels that I usually keep on my art desk. The roll was the perfect shape, circumference, length to cover up all of my mistakes, and it worked much better than the foam ever would have. And now you get to witness some more painting vibes because this required 1 layer of gray paint, which I finally replaced after the Book Nook incident of 2023, and 2 layers of silver to get that shine. Some of that foam was still salvageable and didn't have any of the dried, torn glue on it, so I decided to use those as the end caps for the hilt. It was either that or more cut up paper towel roll, but the foam gave it more dimension and was a lot easier to paint. The strips I cut were too short at first though, so I had to kind of MacGyver them together with some super glue. That was fun. I wrapped these newly lengthened strips around the bottom and top of the tube and cut them back down again so they would be easier to glue together. Broke out all reliable again for this one. I simply glued a strip onto the foam and then wrapped it around the top and the bottom, and held it there for like a minute to make sure it stayed in place. I also sometimes would have to put a little more glue on the seams where it met because it would just keep flipping off. That sounds weird when I say it that way, but you know what I mean. It wouldn't stay put. Back to painting. The next hour of this project was just painting and detail painting and layering and making sure everything was nice and smooth. I do love painting details because it's very calming. I also didn't film all of it because I just got so absorbed in making everything look good. It's just so soothing. If you've ever painted anything ever, you get how therapeutic detail painting can be. The one detail I remembered to film every step of was the eye on the side of the hilt. First, I mapped out the circle with white paint, not making it look perfect, but making it look a decent enough size, because I would outline and fix it later. I did 2 layers of white paint to make it as matte as possible. I didn't want any of the silver bits showing through. Then came a couple coats of red for the pupil. I don't think I waited long enough for the second layer of white to dry because it looks very, very pink on the first layer. So I think I had to do 3 instead of the usual 2 for this one. And there was also a part on the seam of the paper towel that just would not dry no matter what. Next, I began to wish that I had way steadier hands than I do because it was time to outline the eye with black. And also add those little eyelashes. Oops, I'm just correcting something there. And I also had to add, oh, this is the pupil, the other thing was the iris. I don't know my eye anatomy. But yeah, a lot of black paint and a lot of focusing because my hands are so shaky and I had to get this as steady as possible. I think it turned out pretty good. They're not completely symmetrical. Death the Kid would hate me for that, but I love how they turned out. It was as good as I could manage to make it. I've been calling the little thingy that sticks out on the opposite end of the blade the counterweight, even though it doesn't do much to help with the top heaviness of the blade. I drew on those little circle details with pencil because it gave it a little more texture and it was better than mixing paint. I used some of the poster board scraps for this. I cut it down to the perfect length to slip in between the 2 foam bits, broke out All Reliable for the final time of this project, and just shoved it on there, nice and tight. Just to show you how big this thing is, it takes up my entire table and then some. And standing upright, it's about a foot. I didn't measure the length of it. I'll probably add it in post. But look at this thing! The blade and all of the parts that were attached to it were done. The only thing that I really have left to do is to paint this. And also find a way to make sure this thing is stable because it's threatening to fall off because I cut it directly on a seam inside of the tube. First, I'm gonna do the paint job off camera because it's just gray. That was easy. And what do I do about you? Because you are on the verge of ripping off the next time I assemble the thing. Nothing exciting happened here. I just added a little bit of super glue so it would still be flexible but still not rip off every time I inserted the blade into the staff. And And then that was it. It's surreal. I'm very proud of myself for being able to make something that looks like this. Pretty polished and pretty much almost show accurate for under $10. It's not the most stable thing in the world, and I'm not meant to do a bunch of flippy tricks with it, but one of the pros to that is it's gonna save a lot of space when I have to haul it up to cons. Obviously, the full cosplay is not done yet. There's still one or two things that I need to order for it, but I will be debuting the full cosplay at Colossal Con East on September 7th? I think that's where I put it in my lineup. So come like mid-September, there will be photos and footage of this with the entire look. I'm so stoked about it. Thank you very much for watching. If this entertained you in any way, like, subscribe, comment, do all of the things, hit all the buttons. I'm so sucky at outros. Goodbye.